Alright, good morning and welcome to this episode of the BC Coding Stream. I just learned something again and I want to share what's on my mind about this and maybe share some things you didn't know yet. So let's get started and look at some indirect permissions. Don't worry if you don't know what's going on, we will discover this as we go along. All right, so hope everything's working again. It's been a while again, so every time it's a little bit stressing. All right, so hello world extension, page extension. We have some warnings here, but shouldn't be an issue. Did you ever try to do something like this? Yeah, sales invoice header, and then you just do something like, I mean, there is a number series, I assume. So we will do an init, and then we just want to do sales invoice header insert true to insert a new record, and then assign customer number and so on later on, but that's not part of what I will be focusing on here. Give it a minute to publish. Okay. The current permissions prevented the action table data sales invoice header insert indirect table access. This actually gives you the information what's going wrong. I had just today another problem with the send email record, and I will show this in a minute as well, where the error message is not, oh wait a second, no, this is indirect table access. This is how I call the extension. Indirect table access. So no, this actually does not give you the error message, like what's going wrong. It just says you that you don't have permissions to do what you wanted to do. And this is a runtime error. So, and I have super permissions. I go to users. This is just a sandbox I created. So I have super permission set. So it's not permissions per se. There is nothing on the permissions part what you can do about this. So, and by the way, I just rewatched a video from Eric Hogarth on this, and I've linked this into the description. So if you're on YouTube, by the way, so if you want to rewatch that, it's really good as well. And I'm gonna cover part of what he covered in there as well. So indirect permissions, what is it about? If we go to users and we look at the effective permissions, we can do something like filter indirect. So you notice I have super permissions, but I still don't have all the direct permissions on all the tables. And this is basically posted entries, posted tables, I don't know, where there are like ledger entry tables, and we also have what we just used in the code, the sales invoice header, and you can see I have indirect insert permissions and modify permissions. I can delete directly for some reason, I don't know, but insert and modify is indirect. What does this mean? This means that, well, mainly users cannot do like from pages or something. They cannot directly press the delete button and the record is gone. This is, I think, the intended behavior. And then also you cannot do code stuff like this. If you want to get around this by code, you need to create a code unit, just some code unit, and here you can do We need to create a procedure. Procedure. Inside sales invoice header is fine. And then we'll do the exact same thing. We can just copy the code from here. Like this. And now the interesting part is we need to give the code unit permissions, which is table data, sales, invoice header, insert. So you have, if you give permissions onto those, like those kind of permissions in a code unit, you have different options, and those are not limited to what you see here. So we have read, insert, modify, delete, and the capital versus like uppercase, lowercase is indirect versus direct permissions. So I can give the code unit indirect permissions, and then I mimic the same thing. That because when you create a permission set, let me just show you this. Where are the permission sets? If you create a new permission set like this, and now we go to permissions, we can include stuff, but this is not what I want to do. Okay, I want to include, okay, they changed a little bit around here. Include table data, and then I can give the user direct or indirect. So yes is direct permissions and indirect is indirect permissions. So, and this is the same thing. If I want to give a user like not direct permissions, so they cannot go into the into a page and open the payment terms and read whatever payment terms I've set up in the system, I can still give them indirect permissions. So then whenever a code unit has those permissions specified, they can still read the data through the code unit. So this is used to prevent users from actually seeing the data, but still allowing them to work with the data if the code requires to read that data. So that's what indirect versus direct is. And then there is, like, through the license from licensing from Microsoft that's under the hood. I don't know how exactly they're doing it, but it's coming through the license. They are forcing us to only use direct permissions on those tables. If I go back, and you can look at this through the effective permissions. Let's filter again. Filter. Indirect. So they're forcing us to say, well, GL entry, every user in the system, everyone, also with super permissions, can only read or insert GL entries indirectly. So this is what's happening here. So I can give read permissions to the code unit, and then, oh well, insert permissions to the code unit, and then if I instead of just doing it directly here, code unit, I again forgot the screencast mode. Code unit, insert sales invoice header. Now if I do it like this, this will work. Not saying that this is the best code. This doesn't make any sense at all like this, but it shouldn't raise the error anymore. Now the customer page opened. For everyone that didn't see it before, when I had this code in here, it immediately showed an error since this is on open page. So now if I would go there to this posted sales invoices, I would probably see an empty one, which doesn't make any sense. see. Why is this not? This is stupid. Oh, it doesn't. It didn't even give a number. Oh, indirect in the code unit. Oh, you mean this indirect? Let's see. This is the benefit. If you just take the time to look at those kind of things in detail, you can actually try stuff out like this. If you're doing like customer work, it's usually like, okay, it works, never mind, don't touch it again. So now, oh wait, yes, wait a second. Yeah, my problem is that the posting number, I would have expected actually that there is an insert trigger that cares about the inserting. Okay, 1 second. We need to delete this. Well, I mean, this is just a sandbox, so I don't really care. Let's just give it a number and continue. Number, whatever. Let's see. Yeah, I think it's in the posting code unit, you're right. And the number series specified on the unposted document header. So, yeah. Now, indirect also works. So it's either, okay, that's, I mean, there probably is some sense to it, I don't know, but indirect works, direct and indirect, and it doesn't make a difference. You cannot do direct permissions on here. This is also what I learned not too long ago. Direct permissions on the permissions property on a code unit doesn't change anything. So you cannot like say, you cannot give direct permissions here and then not like the user with, it still doesn't work if the user doesn't have permissions. So you cannot give direct permissions and then insert without the user having insert permissions. For this, we have the, how's it called? Inherent permissions. If you give inherent permissions, then you can omit the permissions on the user's permissions setup. Then you're saying that this has permissions to do the inserting, whether or not the user has permissions to do so. So yeah, but this actually only does indirect permissions, this property. Did you try this combination when code unit has direct and actual is indirect? Yeah, this is what we just did. You cannot, like the user, like every user, because of licensing restrictions, license restrictions, has indirect insert permissions on the sales invoice header. So this is what we just did. The user permissions are indirect, my users, although I have super, and either set it to direct permissions or indirect permissions because it doesn't make a difference here. Now I lost track what I wanted to do. Wait a second. Okay, let's actually test the inherent permissions as well because I'm curious. Does it work like this? No. Inherent permissions. Now, oh, this is how it works. So object type is database. What options do we have? Oh, here they call it table. So that's interesting. And what's the next parameter? Object ID. Database, sales, invoice header. Permissions. X. Okay. Did I miss the table data? I cannot do inherent permissions on table data. I never tried that before, but I was certain that it works. Insert. Oh, it's like this. Let's see if we can force it. Inherent permission scope. So I don't need the scope. Oh, object permissions type. Okay. This one. Okay, here's table data. All right. What? An object? An application object. Table 112 could not be found in the current extension. Oh, that's why. Okay, yeah, that's a restriction from the inherent permissions property. So you can only do that. You can only give permissions to a procedure to certain objects when those objects are within the scope of your current extension. It doesn't work like that. So yeah, we cannot try this. So yeah, you need to give the code unit indirect permissions to the table data thing to elevate the permissions of that code unit to actually be able to do stuff like this whenever those tables are indirect. Now the thing I don't really like about this is that we do not have a way in code at compilation time to identify those kind of objects, because it's managed through the license and not through the language. So what I would like, and I just pushed a tweet about this, let me know if the music is too loud. It was too loud for me, actually. I would like to see a property on tables where you can specify that, like, limit the permissions to the table access, so we can give warnings or errors even at compilation time to prevent runtime errors like this. And the way I stumbled about this, and I didn't know this even existed, is not about insert, delete, or modify permissions which are indirect, but read permissions. So we have tables in the system where the license prevents reading directly. And mine was send email. So there is no way, because Microsoft wants to limit, and there is a setup for this also, like email, is it email permissions, email view policies, where you can set up which user can look at all the emails or just at their own emails. And the default is everyone can only see their own emails. Now this is why they need to have indirect read permissions on those on that table. And I just wanted to do the same thing, try if the permissions in the code unit allow us to read those mails. Send mails. Send email. So if I just do find first here, I would expect to see an error. Let's remove that for now. Good point. I would have expected to see the error that I cannot access that table without there being any records. So why, I mean, if I'm not allowed to read this, I'm also not allowed to receive the information that there are none. So yeah, that's weird. I cannot generate this. Let's see. Let's actually just insert one and try and test this first. Insert send mail. Because in theory, I also should be able to insert send mails if I have the indirect permissions. So let's see. Yeah, that's probably not how it needs to be, but we just have an ID, and that's probably how to increment. All right, so then we just need to do this and call it probably. Let's see. That didn't give an error, so let's see if we can read now, or if we cannot read now. Yeah, okay, now we get that error. And this is what I had just today. Because I wanted to link those, and I did not know that there were those kind of restrictions by the license on that table. So since inserting already worked, I probably I'm pretty sure that reading also works. Read send mail. No, I just want to have to find first. Don't need anything fancy. Yeah. What? Oh, yeah. Absolutely. No, I just forgot the permissions. So that way it works. So it's, at least this is a consistent thing. Now, what I wanted to show you as well. We do not have permissions, the permissions property on any object. It's just on code unit, so you need to have a dedicated code unit with the necessary permissions to do so, to do whatever they need to do. And I feel like it's pretty good practice to add permissions, like indirect permissions, to every code unit onto any table data that they need to access. So it is enough if users have those indirect permissions to use whatever code is in here, at least as far as you have control about this. Now the tricky part about this is you don't know, like if you call out to base functionality or others, like other extensions, third-party extensions code, you do not know what kind of permissions they need down the road. If they do not do their stuff through code units and they don't follow the same principle, there might be clashes otherwise, but at least you're using, like you're adding the permissions into your code as it has to be. Reports as well. Oh yeah, reports can also, yeah. There is some such thing like processing only reports, which are, I don't know why to say, like to use request pages, I assume. And then you can do processing in those as well, and they also seem to have that property. I don't like to use those, but yeah, if you want to, if you need to, you can do the same thing on reports, I assume. Pages too, but not page extensions. Pedro said, as I understand it, giving indirect permissions via page extensions is not allowed. Does not allow read, insert, modify, delete the table via an object unless that object sets the permissions property as well. Not sure if I understand that, but I want to try if we can achieve the same thing on a page with permissions, because I'm somewhat sure that this isn't working. If it does work, then I learned something. My page is perfectly fine. Card, we don't need a table. We don't need layout. I never tried to open a page without anything on it. Let's see. Let's first make sure the error appears and then continue. Yeah, okay. It seems like the page closes away again immediately, but it does seem to work. Interesting. Let's try this. First without, and then with permissions. Yeah, okay, so we cannot insert stuff. I was 100% sure that this has to be code units. So here's proof. It does work on pages. And I assume probably then any object except for extension objects. Probably. So thanks for pointing that out. I did not know that. That's actually a good thing. So then I want to correct my statement. I think any object should have the necessary permissions in place, allowing users to use indirect permissions, because then when administrators create their permission sets, they can actually use the indirect permissions setting in their permission sets for the users. So if you're just using, if you're not adding the permissions to your objects, you're preventing essentially the use of indirect permissions in permission sets, I would say. Because then any users always, like all the users always need to have the direct permissions to run your code. And if you add it, yet you can, like, indirect permissions is enough where the admins or the one that creates custom permission sets does not want the users to directly read data from the extension, from the table. That's what I meant. The user has the right to read indirectly, thus through an object via code, and yet error if they do not also give this right to the object. Yes. Yeah, okay. So yeah, that's exactly correct. So if the user does have indirect permissions, but this is missing, it doesn't work. That's, I think, how I understood it. Yeah, so that might be another linter rule that should be helpful. I'm not sure if this is an easy rule or not, but I think it would be a nice thing to add, to give a warning if permissions, indirect permissions in any way are missing in an object, or not exactly how they have to be. Need to think about that. Okay, so that's covered. Now I've prepared another environment. Absolutely. I am also learning a lot. I feel like going 2 or 3 years back, I did not know anything about permissions, like in any way of how all this construct works, and only with the introduction of the inherent permissions I actually started to look into the topic. So yeah, it's crazy, and it's also crazy that I think that well, this is taking forever to start. That's unfortunate. Okay, let's delete this container. This, by the way, is Cosmo Alpaka. If you're not familiar with this, take a look at it and give it a try. There is a free trial for everyone, like 50 container hours or something. So yeah, just install the VS Code extension and give it a try. So this should give me a new container, and it always takes a little bit of time to get those started. So let me just outline what I wanted to talk about. And this is only something because I watched the video from Eric that I remembered that this is still the case. And curious if this is also the case with the Chronos license, and this is what I want to test. Now, I'm not sure how many of you did do development during the NAV days, where you had to have a developer license generated through that stupid portal and imported into your development environment to do anything development in NAV. Those developer licenses allow you to do stuff like this, because if, like, remember what I said, this is coming through the license. The developer license actually did not have those kind of restrictions, and I mean they're still around, so they do not have those kind of restrictions. So if you're working on a developer license, you would just be able to run your code without adding those indirect permissions to your objects. And only after deploying to the customer, you would find out that this doesn't work like this and you were missing something. So it's even, I mean, there has to be a word. We need to come up with a word for this. It's not a runtime error, it's a customer runtime error. So it's like even manual tests, as long as you're using the developer license, do not show you the errors that are coming along with this. So it's even more critical to have a rule like this, I think. I mean, I'm not doing much on premise anymore, so yeah, I really want to give this a shot with the Kronos license. I hope this doesn't take too long. Let's see. Let's maybe have a look through those kind of like. Okay, we have. I wanted to get an idea of what kind of indirect permissions we're looking at here in terms of reading. So I do not even know what the net promoter score setup stuff is. Product video buffer. Aren't those like, if the name says buffer, shouldn't those be temporary tables where I do not have any license restrictions? Interesting. Email logging, completely indirect. Translation. Persistent blob. I think that there is a code unit for this, so you're supposed to use the code unit. Feature uptake. And maybe also the reason why I would like to see property for this is, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think there is a way for anyone but Microsoft to introduce those kind of restrictions. Saying, well, you cannot do direct stuff on my table, direct access in any way. So it's just a thing that Microsoft can introduce, because again, I haven't looked into entitlements in any way. And this is, I think, the only thing we have close to licenses. Let's have a look. Entitlement. The entitlement is associated with a Microsoft Entra application. Okay, in this case, I do not need the role kind of stuff. Now, entitlements. Interesting. Okay, and if I do like role, then I can do role type. The user has given Microsoft Entra role. Native user, guest user. Still doesn't let me specify anything. Oh, a permission set. But I still don't think that this will let me prevent anyone from creating a permission set manually and then assigning direct permissions. So yeah, I don't think that this is allowing us to do the same kind of restrictions. Let's see. Replace this. Create launch JSON. Yeah, we need to download symbols in a minute. Oh, actually we don't, but it's not there yet. Then on the table, we can do like access internal, but this doesn't mean like this is preventing any kind of access to the table. So they cannot even reference the table object directly. I mean, this is sort of something, but not exactly the same. Face is valid. This is also interesting. Absolutely off topic, but sometimes you might don't want to have customers pasting stuff into a table. Replicate data. Interesting. Do we have the permissions again? Scope. Oh. And table type. And I thought I've read something. Reload. Sometimes it just breaks, like the IntelliSense for me. I don't know. For new objects, I think it's new table objects in particular. Yeah, this is interesting. Oh, access by permission. Oh, this is okay. More stuff. All right. There is something like access by permissions, and I think I don't think tables have this. No, pages have this. Yep, and then you have this property on page controls, page actions, and I did not know, but apparently like table fields as well. And this means, and this is pretty extensive, so give it a read. But just explaining this with my words, if, for example, you have an action to navigate to a setup page, for example. From a page, you can navigate like a shortcut action to navigate to a certain setup page. If you have let's actually do this, because like just explaining this without showing anything might be a little bit difficult. Let's do actions area. In this case, we would like to have navigation, and then oh, this is my page, not a page extension, so it does work. So now if I do like on object page, some kind of setup, doesn't matter, should be your own setup in this case, but just want to show something. In this case, when you do not have access to this page, I would need to check, but I'm pretty sure that when you use the run object link, if you do not have access to the page, it will not show up in the UI, since and on premise there is a setting for this, I think, but in the cloud it just works like the default setup on prem as well. So if you do not have access to a reference object, and I think you need at least read permissions to open it, then the action will disappear for you only. Now, if you do your custom code instead, the runtime does not know about what are the conditions for this action to disappear based on permissions. In this case, you can do the access by permission property to specify the permissions necessary for this action to show up. If any of those permissions are missing, the user will not see the action. So that way you can hide UI and clean up the UI for the user. If there is like 50% of actions they can't use because of missing permissions, they can also be hidden. Some find this a little bit disturbing, since the UI will be different for every user if this is used excessively. But I think still it makes a lot of sense to just clean up what's not necessary for the users. Okay, the container is ready. So let's give it a try. let's just see. So this was the last one we tried, so I will remove the permissions again. And let's see if it works on premise. Let's just copy the username. Yeah, okay. This is what I meant. If I publish the same, like I did not change any code, I now publish again to the sandbox. And there we go. So same code, nothing changed. In the container, in the Docker container, this is Alpaka, but it, like locally with the Chronos, everything the same. On Docker, it works. Sandbox, it doesn't work. In the customer environment, it also won't work. Whether it's cloud or on-premise, doesn't matter. They don't have the developer license in their environments. Okay, so let's. I wanted to check. This was Alpaka. Let's go to the user settings and look at the effective permissions, because I would like to see whether this is working or not. Okay, so I have super permissions, effective permissions. Okay, it doesn't even show me the effective permissions. That's interesting. Okay, so I guess I have full access to everything. Let's do something else. Just to close things out. And code unit. And this will be a test code unit. Is it subtype? Yeah. What am I doing today? Procedure test. Permissions. Now I will probably let's see if this, I mean, this should also fail in the code unit. So let's just do it like this. And then I don't need to worry about the numbers being used already. Okay. In the Docker container. Yeah, I need to remove this, and also need to remove this. The AL test tool, what was my ID? Run. Yeah, that was faster than I expected. Because I wanted to go into test permissions a little bit. Just to round things up a little bit, talking about permissions. And this is actually good. So if you just run your tests without this is not allowed. Not good. Then you will get those kind of errors. You will find them before pushing to production, hopefully. Let's run it again with the test permissions disabled. Yeah, it just went through. So if you do this, I'm not even sure what the other options are. Okay. Restrictive is the default. Could I get like... Oh, here. Setting non-restrictive will cause that the permissions execution context of every test of the code unit is set to full access. Okay. Restrictive. Setting restrictive will cause every test in the code unit to be set default to full access. What's the difference? Oh, opposite to restrictive, the setting test permissions property non-restrictive does not require a change of permissions. I don't know. And this only relevant, it's not relevant for test methods. It's only relevant for test methods, not for test code units. It specifies that a test method uses the test permission property setting of the test code unit to which it belongs, which is the default, by the way. So yeah, if you just omit this setting entirely, you will get test permissions. And then as stated in the tooltip already, and I'm not sure if I need... Yeah, I need some dependencies there. But this might be a topic for another stream, how to do testing with permissions. And I can kindly refer to Luc van Voogt's book about this, and this is like what I use to look up this kind of stuff if I need to do this. But yeah, if you do not do the test permission disabled, you will get those kind of errors upon running your tests, and this is probably the only way to really catch those if you're developing against Docker before pushing those that code to Sandbox. Yeah, and I think the more I think about this, the more I think we would need to have those kind of like such a rule on the linter cup to really make sure that just set all the permissions and be done with it. Make it clean, and then it's good, I think. Yeah, I think that's it for today. I hope that some of you learned something. I learned a lot. I did not know that I can do permissions on any object, not just on code units. So again, was useful for me as well. Yeah, if you don't want to miss the next stream, make sure to follow and subscribe and stuff on YouTube. That's where my main platform is for streaming. I try to start a stream whenever I have something useful to stream. So I do not follow any schedule. Unfortunately, I just do start the streams as it comes. So yeah, make sure to get those notifications, and see you next time. Thanks for joining.